It's the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to the post-FSU Notre Dame edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines podcast, presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I'm joined today by Osceola Publisher Jerry Kutz, Managing Editor Bob Ferrante, Osceola Football Analyst and former FSU football player Mark Salva, and recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. But before we get started, as always, I want to remind our Osceola subscribers that you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases and your membership card to present for in-store purchases. Guys, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me. It was great to be back in Doak Campbell Stadium last night in an atmosphere we've become accustomed to our whole lives. And on top of that, we got treated to a great game, one where we learned a lot about this Florida State football team, despite the fact that it lost 41-38 in overtime to a highly ranked Notre Dame team. There's a lot to take away from this game. We're going to see some things that may or may not play out and be consistent throughout the year. But the one thing that stood out to me, guys, early on was the fight and grit and determination of this football team. The game could not have started any worse for Florida State. Notre Dame gets the ball, drives 75 yards, scores on a 41-yard pass on 4th and 1 to take a 7-0 lead. Florida State promptly takes its first two possessions and marches negative 19 yards and really finds itself in a hole early, was able to dig out of that. And we saw the same resolve in the second half. And with going down 38-20, fighting back from an 18-point deficit to tie the game. And so the one thing that I think we saw was obviously resolve and maturity from this football team, because I'm not sure that we would have seen the same fight last year. And obviously I think some of that is a credit to the additions to the team. They've added some mature veterans, and also, as we've talked about for now going on probably a year, the fact that they had the advantage of a full off season of spring practices. But anyway, I'm going to open it up to you guys. Bob, you were in the press box with me last night. What are some of your takeaways from the game as a whole before we start breaking it down?
The energy in Doak was just phenomenal. It was the best I've seen in years. And it really helped to, I think, carry the team through some difficult parts there and give them some energy. You even saw when Jayshon Corbin had that big 89-yard run, the crowd just needed that just to give them a spark too, and kind of help the Seminoles through the game. It was a really special night for I think all the right reasons. I'd like to start briefly just by mentioning all the tributes to Coach Bowden were fantastic. The Marching Chiefs, I was able to stand up on the roof of Doak and catch some video of the Chiefs spelling out Bobby and doing Amazing Grace. It was just very touching. All the fans had their cell phone lights out. It was a very cool moment, I think. And of course, Ann Bowden with Ginger Bowden Madden, and they had the portrait that Coach Bowden had commissioned. So it was an emotional night, I think, for the fans, but I think the community needed that. And it was done at a time where it didn't disrupt from the play on the field. And what we saw on the field was everything that we wanted. We wanted to see a fun, competitive football team, a team that looked like it had made progress, that they had communicated better, understood the scheme. It kind of looked like a year or two football team in a lot of regards. And like we've said, there's a lot of positives. There's still some flaws, but you see enough in week one to kind of make you feel good about the direction of where things are going.
Well, Jerry, you had mentioned several times as we'd gotten ready for the season to start that I think you've written about it. We certainly talked about it last week on the podcast. And I'm not sure that I was buying into it until last night. You had said that, what we see on the scoreboard might not necessarily match up with what we see with our own eyes, the final result. And I think that's kind of I'm a believer now on that. What you said, Mark and I have, and I'll let Mark comment a little bit later, but we've been texting throughout the day, and I don't think that either one of us, and maybe all four of us, have ever felt better about the outcome of a game when it doesn't go in Florida State's favor. Kind of give me your thoughts on what you saw last night overall.
Well, I'm starting to write a column, and I'm leading it with not since the 28-point comeback in the 1994 game against Florida, when we came back to tie it 31-31, have Seminole fans left the stadium feeling good about anything other than a win. It kind of reminded me of that game. And I mean, as far as the crowd, I was sitting in the Champions Club around fans, and it was euphoric. Even though we missed that field goal, people were very happy leaving the stadium. They saw what they came for, which was the performance on the field. They saw what we've been talking about throughout camp, about improvement in various segments of the team and in the attitude. I thought, in summary, we faced adversity twice last night, at least, that were quitters' paradises. Prior teams would have just, surrendered. And our team didn't, nor did the fans. I mean, I looked to the exits when it got down 18, and I think the only people heading to the exits were heading to the restrooms, because that crowd stayed in it the whole time. And, a tip of the cap to the students. They got there, like, that student section was half full an hour before kickoff, and filled in with 17 minutes before kickoff. It was pretty much full. And that's something we haven't seen around here in a while.
Yeah, and I thought the band being in the student section was pretty cool too. I thought that was a great switch by the university.
Yeah.
Mark, what were your thoughts on last night, quickly, on the overall impression of what you saw from the team?
Yeah, similar to these guys. 2 years ago, we lose that game 50-10, especially the way it started. And the game really didn't start until after Corbin's run. When that run happened, the game really started. We saw, okay, we can play with these guys. And I think just overall, even though we lost, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't embarrassed to be. Maybe embarrassed is too strong a word, but I wasn't down on a loss. I wasn't like, man, I was proud of the team. And that's just being honest about how I felt in the past. I was embarrassed sometimes when we played these games and guys would quit and tackling would be shoddy and you wouldn't see any effort, and see guys celebrating, when you're down 18 or 20 or 30 and guys celebrating after a pass breakup where a guy drops a ball. We didn't see any of that kind of stuff. And I was, for the first time in a long time, I was really proud of these guys, proud to be a Seminole, proud for the effort and the fight that they showed.
Yeah, and listen, I thought it was, I don't think I've ever seen this at Florida State. Maybe I have and just don't remember it. But, the fans gave the team a round of applause as they were leaving the field. And I thought it was well earned. I thought that these kids did just exactly that. They fought to the end. They did not give up. And it's something we had not seen around here in a couple of years. And we thought we saw evidence of this as the season progressed last year. Even though there were some bad losses, we did see the no quit start, that competitive mentality continue to develop, and obviously was validated on Sunday night. And of course, they got to continue that now. I mean, it was a big game, an easy game to get up for, right? Your opener, national television, only game in town. Now they got to validate that next week and continue into the ACC schedule in 2 weeks. But yeah, certainly. I mean, it was a fun night. Like Bob said, it was great to be there for the Coach Bowden tribute. And I think my favorite part was I believe they played Amazing Grace and spelled his name, and that was a pretty cool moment up in the press box. But moving on to the game, guys, there's so many places and so much to talk about, but I guess we'll just kind of roll into it like we did the game. The defense started on the field. We weren't quite sure what we were going to see, obviously, because the defense had a long way to go from last year. But I think what we learned is that this defensive line, and maybe even the front seven to a lesser extent, is totally different than it was last year based off this game. I mean, the guys played physical up front. It looks like we hit FSU hit home runs with Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, who were both very strong early, along with several other key performers. But Mark, we're talking up front, so let you start. What did you see from the defensive line that you like?
I saw something I hadn't seen in I don't know how long. And that was guys maintaining gap integrity, controlling the line of scrimmage. I mean, a thing of beauty to me, and it was a great example of it. Notre Dame trying to run the ball, and I forget which running back it was, but trying to dip into the guard, the A gap, the center guard hole, bouncing it to try to the next hole because it wasn't there, bouncing to the next hole, and then bouncing all the way outside. And Jarvis Brownlee came up and just absolutely whacked them. They're going to the left. And that to me spoke volumes to how much improved this defense is, maintaining the gap integrity. I mean, we held them to like 2.5 yards rushing. And this is a team that emphasizes the run, has a very well schemed running game. They're committed to it. And we took away their best weapons, the running backs. Then the other side of that is we had 4 sacks. 4.5 sacks. That's got to be more sacks than we had all year, right? The year before. And I mean, the pressure was there, and a lot of times it wasn't necessarily with pressure; it was with 4 guys. So I saw much better tackling. I mean, we had some missed tackles early, and there were some missed tackles throughout the course of the game, but that's going to happen. We don't practice tackling that much, but for the most part, there were some really good shots in there. But the big thing for me is that, man, we look like a defense that kind of knew what we were doing outside of one play. That first touchdown was a blown coverage. And I'm not sure that it was something they schemed. They knew that we would line up differently or wrong or whatever. If they just kind of lucked into it, and it was bad communication. I'm not sure what the case was there. But outside of that, the rest of the touchdowns, they were 50-50 balls that if Brownlee locates the ball in the first one, it's an incomplete or even an interception. The second one down the right sideline was a great throw. Can't take anything away. Great throw and a great catch. I mean, that's going to happen. They're on scholarship too.
And Travis Jay had really good coverage on that play, by the way.
He did. He was there, but it was just a great throw and a great route and a great catch. So, what are you going to do there? And so, yeah, if they can maintain this, we got a chance. Just eliminate the mistakes. That's the big thing with too many mistakes.
Yeah, and we can get into it a little bit later. But I said the same thing. And I think in my column last night after the game, First Impressions, that if you can do this consistently throughout the season, stop the run like they did, and also run the ball like FSU did. We'll come back to you on the offensive line later, but certainly I think that gives you a chance to exceed the expectations of the experts if you are able to do those 2 things consistently, because they're both extremely valuable, as you well know. And Jerry, obviously the linebackers did look better. Still don't think they're probably quite where they need to be, but what did you see from the linebackers last night?
I think we saw what we saw all camp. Lundy is a thumper. There's no question. And I had some tackles for losses, and I liked him in the game. Gainer is Gainer, and he made nice plays. The only thing the Loach played well, I thought. The thing I thought
the Loach popped a lot last night.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Mark. Yeah, I think the one thing we struggled in that game was maybe coverage, out of the linebackers covering. I think they had some decent sized gains against coverage with linebackers and coverage. But other than that, I thought good.
Yeah, listen, again, much improved, I thought, than what we saw a season ago. And I agree with you guys on Lundy and Deloach. I both thought they played, showed up and played well. And listen, they're young still, right? I mean, they're going to, the whole team is young, really. I mean, if you look at this roster, I believe there's 2 seniors on defense, and that's it. I don't think there's but 2 seniors on offense. If I'm maybe 3 with Mackenzie Melton, and Parchment, but that's really about it. I mean, there's not this team is primarily still made up of sophomores and freshmen and redshirt juniors, and I think that we'll continue to see all of them get better as we go along. Now, listen, we weren't sure if the defense was going to be as solid up front as they were against Notre Dame. I mean, I think they held them to about 71 yards, if I'm thinking correctly, Bob. And I think Kieran Williams I think he averaged less than 2 yards per run. At least he was late in the game. Now, one of the things that we thought coming into the season was that the pass defense would be better. And listen, I do think that they covered better, especially the corners. I thought Jarvis Brownlee and Travis Jay played pretty good. And as Mark alluded to, they had good coverage on 3 of the 4 touchdowns. The other team made plays, but you had another quarterback who was very efficient. The same thing from last year. At one time, he was 23 of 28, and I believe he finished 27 of 35 or 26 of 35, something like that. Jack Cohen for Notre Dame. I did think they played better overall, but Bob, what were your thoughts on what you saw from the secondary?
I think Jack Cohen was better than we expected, to be quite honest. I mean, the way he kind of just stood in the pocket and handled the pressure and dropped a lot of dimes right in there. There were a couple drops too, but I mean, guy was 26 of 35 for 366. And honestly, there were a couple plays where, you'd like to see Travis Jay contest maybe a little bit better, maybe turn, put the arms up, whatever. You don't know how he's being coached, what he's being asked to do on that specific, one-on-one coverage, what Marcus Woodson wants, what Adam Fuller wants. But we did see really tight coverage throughout the night. And at times you just have to say Jack Cohen made a great pass and those receivers went up and won those one-on-ones. That the next step for a guy like Travis Jay is to win those one-on-ones. And I thought we saw a little bit better fight overall from Brownlee in pass coverage, not to mention what he does in the run game. For a cornerback to be that nasty in the run game is pretty impressive. But I thought overall week 1, it seems silly to say that we're trying to find some positives after you give up 366 passing yards and 41 points. But you do see some honest positives when you look back at this, and you just think that there's some room to grow there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was the same performance we saw last year against Pitt when Kenny Pickett went 21 of 27 and just about every throw was 15, 20 yards. Now, that too many big plays in the past game, we saw that for sure. That was another thing that was consistent the last year, but I do think it's a different kind of first of all, you're playing an elite team. That does matter. It does matter who you play. As I talk about all the time, it does matter who you're playing against. But but I do think we saw better play in the secondary. But it's a secondary that still has some improving to do based on what we saw last night. And listen, you're not going to play great in every facet of the game and in every segment against a team like Notre Dame, not where Florida State is right now in its development as a young team. But listen, I will say this, and Mark, you may agree with me. Last year we saw guys out of place, didn't know where their help was coming from. It certainly looks like this is a defensive unit that is understanding the system better, is playing more aggressively because of that, and also seems to understand where they're supposed to be and where their help is coming from in calls. There were a lot of great examples of guys leveraging inside or outside so that they could get that ball carrier to get some help to tackle that ball carrier. And we saw a swarming defense particularly early on in this game, that we have not seen a gang tackling defense in the last 3 years that I can remember.
No, I agree 100%. And I'm sitting here looking at the tackling stats. Kalen DeLoach, with 4 tackles, 4 assists. Jarvis was next with 4 and 2. Akeem Dent 4 and 2. Sidney Williams 3 and 2. So that kind of makes my point that inside that front 7, making plays bounce outside, and then those guys coming up and making plays. It really stuck out to me, and how good that Jarvis and Akeem tackled, even Brian Gant. I mean, you're right. Scheme wise, guys were in the right places, and they'll start making plays. They're still young guys there, and they're going to get better. And you're right. Those receivers were pretty good, and that tight end was a monster. So kudos to them for the players that they have, and I think they're going to put a lot of points on a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how number 4 for Notre Dame does not have more catches in his career than I think he exceeded catches in his career last night. I mean, his single game catch last night was more than Bob. I think we wrote about it. I think he may have only had 7 career catches coming, or 7 last year, but I can't. No, he missed last season. So, I can't figure out how he doesn't have more catches. But anyway, they had some pretty good kids. But I think defensively, much better despite the numbers. And I actually had put on Twitter today, despite the fact that when you look at the stats, it's going to show 366 yards in the passing column for Notre Dame. I think Florida State's potentially has 2 stars in the making at quarterback at Travis Jay and Jarvis Brownlee. And Bob, you and I talked about it in the press box last night. And you've already mentioned it. Jarvis Brownlee loves physical coming. He comes up and run support. We saw he could cover last year, and he'll continue to get better at that. The more he sees, more reps he gets. He's still a young kid, but my Lord, was he physical last night, and that was fun to see. Obviously, Travis Jay looks like he's got plenty. He recovers well. When he made several nice plays last night, and I think both those two have bright futures ahead of them. We've talked about Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, but did anybody else to you guys stand out on defense where you're like, all right, I did not know that we were going to get that from him? And Jerry, I'll start with you.
Repeat the question, Pat.
We've talked about Keir Thomas, Jermaine Johnson, Jarvis Brownlee, and Travis Jay, but was there anybody on defense that stood out to you that maybe you were not expecting, that flashed and you're like, well, we might be better off because this guy seems to be a little bit more involved than he was last year?
Not really. I felt like the guys that we expected to play well played well. And, I saw Cooper maybe is one that I thought played real well last night. And we saw a little Jarrett Jackson, not a lot, but enough to see that they had the confidence to play him in that game.
Sully, what about you? Did anybody on defense pop out to you that maybe you weren't expecting?
Yeah, Jerry, here hit mine. I thought Cooper played great, played much better than I thought he would. I thought he'd be gassed halfway through the game and, just get the usual, just kind of sit there and lane. But man, he was active. He reestablished line of scrimmage with his feet. He was a physical presence in there. And they have supposedly a first-round draft pick center, So that was encouraging. That if he can play at that level consistently, that's really going to help us.
Bob, what about you?
Yeah, I thought Quayshawn Fuller had a nice night. Kind of had
You stole my guy.
Yeah, the other one besides Fuller, I'll let you kind of expound there. But Sidney Williams is a guy that we at times I think overlook, maybe is the right term, not forget about, but because he had that injury in high school, had to catch up a little bit last year as a true freshman. But he's a guy who's really impactful in the secondary. He had some big sticks there, I thought.
He did.
And I mean, this is just, it has the makings of an improving, but he's still very young defensive backfield.
Yeah, listen, I had the same 2 guys you had. I had Quayshawn Fuller and Sidney Williams written down. Quayshawn, I'm not sure how many snaps he played, but I remember there was a series, I believe, in the fourth quarter where he forced a bad throw or had a sack. But anyway, 2 back-to-back plays, and looks a lot more confident and aggressive coming off the ball than he did a year ago. And then I had the same thing with Sidney Williams. He made 2 really nice tackles that I can remember. He closes on the ball quickly and is obviously just like you would think from a Florida State safety, really aggressive player. But we noticed him last year late, those last 2 ball games where he got pressed in the action. And we've talked about this before, some of that short-term pain from last year where these guys were probably thrown into the onto the frying pan before they were ready. That we're already seeing dividends of that, I think, even coming out of this first game, and Sidney Williams is a perfect example of that. But yeah, I think it was certainly we saw the fight and effort that you want out of a defensive football team, even though it may not have been perfect. Coaches always say that you never get more improvement than going from week 1 to week 2, and regardless of who you play. But Florida State will certainly defense will probably take great strides over the next couple of weeks based off what they learned about themselves. All right, let's move over to the offense. This was an offense that we thought, coming after what we saw last season and what we saw during fall camp and even the spring, that the run offense was going to be the strength of this unit. It certainly was. And the thing that impressed me the most was that you had Jashawn Corbin and Trayshawn Ward led the team in rushing, and Florida State has even taken the next step, and it's the design run games, the running back run game is what's leading the run offense, and not necessarily Jordan Travis scrambling or running quarterback powers and quarterback boots. Mark, this is where you played. Offensive line, that was certainly a strength. What did you see from the offensive line and the run game in particular?
Yeah, the running game to me stuck out. One thing really stuck out, and that is I didn't think that Corbin and Ward and really the whole group had it in them to do what they did. When Corbin's run was a big time run, he made a safety miss, right there on the second level out, and then made a huge cut and outran everybody. I didn't think he had that in him. I honestly didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And that to me was a pleasant surprise because look, the running backs can make the offensive line look really good. You can get them to the second level. You might even get them to the third level, and it's up to them to make a guy miss and make a play. And they did that. They ran hard too. They ran hard. I mean, that series there in the fourth quarter, when they wanted to play that 3-man line for whatever reason, but they're still bringing guys into the box. Those guys ran hard, made guys miss. Offensive line wise, we got guys. We got on guys. I'll say this: we got on guys, and we pressed pretty good. We didn't cover them up real well. We were still on edges a lot, especially in the passing game. We'll talk about that later, I guess. But we're still on edges, meaning guys are still we're out blocking half of guys, not whole guys. I hope that makes sense. So there's still work to be done there. But yeah, the effort's there. The understanding is there. Our offensive line is still a work in progress, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, while we're hitting on that, let's talk about that. We had concerns coming into the season about their ability to protect the passer, and I'm not sure that every defense they will face will be as good as Notre Dame's, who was very solid, I thought, on defense, personnel-wise anyway, if not schematically. But, a lot of pressures, a lot of sacks. How do you go about correcting this as the team moves forward? Do you shuffle do you move Devontae Love-Taylor from right guard to right tackle and Darius inside? Is it more about who you played? How do you continue to try to shore that up?
No, I don't think it's a personnel thing. I think it's I think it's a recognition thing. We are not very good at recognizing and blitz pickup. I think our reaction times are too slow. The other thing we don't do real well on blitz pickup, again, we're on half of guys. We'll get on an inside half of a guy and they'll press up the field and they're showing, and that's spooking the quarterbacks. We don't square guys up and stop them in the hole. And it looks like there's a little bit of indecision. The other thing is, when guys are twisting and moving around and doing all that movement, I hate to get too technical, but we're not square to line scrimmage. We turn our butts to the sideline too much, and so when a guy loops around the other way, we have to, make a really, really athletic move and recover, and instead of staying square and having one level. When you see great offensive lines pick up a lot of blitzes and twists and stunts, it's because the whole line is square to the line of scrimmage and they're all on the same level. And when we have guys on different levels and guys with their pads turned, that's where guys start leaking and you get on edges of guys. And there's a lot of that going on right now. And I think it's just drilling and shoring it up and practicing correctly, and not letting it go. I don't think it's necessarily the people, because everybody's kind of doing it. It's not just one guy. It's happening all across the line. And I think that's where we can improve the most. And I have confidence that I know Coach Atkins knows what he's doing. I know he knows what to do. It's just a matter of us, getting to that point where we're working together, we're one heartbeat, we're working as a unit on all these blitz pickups, and that's what it comes down to.
I wanted to respond to the offensive line question. One thing I think we have to keep in mind is you played a lot of the game without Maurice Smith, who was hurt, and played, I think, that first half and a little bit of the third quarter. And then he went out and Bavion came in and finished the game. And you had an injury to, of course, Gibbons on that last drive. And throughout the week, Robert Scott has been hurt and hasn't been practicing much at all. And then earlier in the camp, we were without Love Taylor. So I think continuity is an issue. And I think we haven't had the same five guys practicing at practice most of the camp. So I'm not sure it's moving personnel as much as it is letting five guys settle in and develop continuity.
I agree.
Valid point. And it's, listen, it's harder. Those stunts and blitzes, they had some nice packages and with some of their stunts and blitz packages. Notre Dame did, I thought, Mark. I don't know what you thought. I thought they had some nice concepts.
But I think they knew what was coming. I mean, heck, I watched the spring game and I knew that first blitz that showed. That was when I watched the spring game and I saw him line those two linebackers up in the A gaps. I knew that blitz was coming because that's what all guys that run that defense do. They put two guys in the A gap, one guy comes, they twist with a lineman, bring and back the other one out. That's coming. So anticipating that stuff is important, is critical. And when you're preparing for a game, you got to know it's coming before it's coming. They should have known that was coming, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's move from the offensive line. Let's talk a little. We're going to get into the quarterbacks because that's where everybody wants to talk about. But let's talk a little bit about the receivers. Jerry, you and Bob in particular had played very close attention to those guys all camp long. I don't recall seeing a ton of drops last night. What were your Jerry? I'll start with you. What did you think about the play of the receivers?
I was very positively impressed with the receivers. I don't remember a drop last night. I mean, it wasn't in a critical moment if there was one. And we just haven't seen that at practice. I mean, drops are common at practice. So they really dialed in and there was great focus, and receivers, I thought, exceeded my hope for them.
Bob, what about you?
Yeah, I thought that little over the middle Malik McLean run where he was hit in stride by Jordan Travis was really nice. I mean, I want to see some plays where guys are kind of up to full speed and then they can kind of use the space to pick up a nice first down or something. Jakai Douglas was kind of a guy who had a really quiet camp, in all honesty. And then to have him kind of make that big play on the run down the sideline, it's clear that speed will play. He doesn't have the height or frame that you might really be looking for, but right now speed will definitely get you on the football field. So it's good to see contributions, I think, from various guys. Darian Williamson had a catch. Parchment was really super quiet, I thought, throughout the game. But then, again, good to see him to get that touchdown late. So we're kind of seeing contributions, I think, from the young guys and the older guys too.
Yeah, I agree, and it was good. Keyshawn, we've seen him have a good camp. He had a solid game, and like you said, that was number one. It was a great call on the pass to Malik where they ran him across the field, and obviously he showed his ability to run after the catch. And I think, as we've talked about a lot since the spring, he's got a chance to be a solid player moving forward, and it's good to see him get his feet wet in the first game against a big time opponent like Notre Dame. I thought we might see a little bit more out of the tight ends from a passing game standpoint. I don't think Cam or Jordan had a catch in the game, so a little bit surprised by that. And of course, we did see Parchment get his first touchdown. I believe that was in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but so it was nice to see those guys produce. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't recall seeing the drops as much as we had in practice. All right. Well, we've covered all the position groups except for quarterbacks, guys. And we had said that we thought Florida State would utilize 2 quarterbacks. I don't know if that was the plan coming into the game, but that is how it worked out. And we saw what we've come accustomed to from Jordan Travis. Making a lot of plays out of nothing, creating extra time in the pocket by being able to escape and buy some time and either throw the ball on the run or run the ball. He did exactly that. We saw some improvement in his drop back passing ability and staying in the pocket, standing tall, and he competed. You couldn't have thrown a better pass than the one he threw to Jakai Douglas. And then of course the feel-good. Then, of course, the feel-good story of college football, Mackenzie Milton enters the game at about 9:06 in the game, plays a series and a half in regulation, completes his first 4 passes, and leads the team to 10 points. So I don't know, Mark, you're the former FSU football player and the former college coach. Tell us a little bit about what you think about what you saw from the quarterbacks.
I think going in, you had no choice but to start Jordan. Just the one practice I was at, he was obviously the most electric player on the field, and you saw him make enough throws to justify the decision. I'm sure, and from everything I heard, he practiced that way throughout camp. And you know what? We're going to need both these guys. The problem you have with Jordan is he doesn't see or anticipate the base throws, the designed offense, so to speak. The throws down the middle, the option routes, the curls, those kind of routes. I mean, for him to hit a player, he's got to the receiver's got to be turned to him and working back towards the ball almost. He did hit the shallow cross, and that was a really nice play. It was easy. It opened up for him, and it was an easy throw. So that was a great play. But we need more of that from him. And he, again, going back to Notre Dame pressuring and the offensive line getting on half guys, he gets spooked a little too early, and then he spins out to where a tackle's blocking the defensive end trying to run him up the field, and he turns right into it, makes the offensive tackle look bad, and that nothing pisses off an offensive lineman more than that. I'm doing my job, and you got to go right where I'm blocking the guy, right? So, well, with Milton, he brings that. He anticipates throws and he can make the throws. But he also brings that other element of his head, his mind, his poise. He is poised back there. And we need, what better guy to have in the fourth quarter when you needed to score 3 touchdowns than to have that guy in there with the poise and the leadership that he shows. Not that Jordan doesn't, but he doesn't have the poise in the passing game that Mackenzie has. And so now you got a decision to make with these 2 guys. What's best for our team moving forward? We're going to need both of them. I have no doubt in my mind. And so how Mike handles this is going to be critical. And I thought it was a great shot on TV yesterday when, after Mackenzie took down the first touchdown, he had both of them around his arms and he was talking to them, and they both had smiles on their face.
Yep.
And that spoke volumes to me about the buy-in both those guys have about the wanting to win a ball game and not worrying about their personal glory, and so it's going to be critical. Who do you start? That's a tough one. You got to put some deep thought into it. I think Milton's definitely the better thrower. Jordan gives you the element that McKenzie doesn't bring, so they complement each other. So I don't know that you play two quarters. I'm not a fan of that either. But man, it's good to have both of them. It's better than having none. That's for sure.
Yeah, and listen, I thought my only surprise was I thought McKenzie might play earlier. In the first half.
Me too.
Was kind of surprised that didn't happen, but I agree with your assessment. I think that they both do have complementary skill sets to each other. And I like that it was validated. We'd seen those two work closely together during camp. You don't ever know how those things really shake out at practice. They seem to be friends and buddies. And I was like you when I watched the television copy this morning, that kind of, gave you a good feeling for not only the culture that Mike Norvell's building, but the fact that these guys have become close in their competition, because that doesn't always happen. And you have to think, because of the respect that the team has for Jordan from the spark he gave him last year, and then what everybody feels about, and all these kids know what McKenzie's been through, you got to hope that this team will follow their lead. And I think that those two guys are probably the guys, along with Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson, that probably I think they're feeding off of from a mentality standpoint. So I was glad to see that, and I agree with you. I'm not sure. I think that we've said all along that they're probably going to use two quarterbacks. It probably does matter who starts. I think to some degree, but I think you'll see both. I think maybe with the exception of Jacksonville State. I think you would probably see both of them, and certainly the conference games at least get opportunities.
I'll say it this way. If we were playing Clemson tomorrow, who would you want at quarterback? I
would go with McKenzie Milton myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so that's that. But I've been listen, and I see a lot of this on social media and through other sites. People seem to think because you're talking positively about McKenzie, you're talking negatively about Jordan. I've seen several people that cover Florida State suggest that that's the fact, and it's not. Just because you say something positive about McKenzie does not mean you're talking negatively about Jordan, but there are substantial differences in both players, whether you want to admit it or not. McKenzie is a better pocket passer and runs a better passing offense. Jordan can do things that McKenzie can't do. They're both dynamic playmakers. They're both dynamic leaders. So I agree. But if you had to play a game that you had to win to go to a bowl game tomorrow, I would want McKenzie Milton as my starter, and I would want Jordan Travis playing a hell of a lot. So
exactly. Again, McKenzie brings poise in the passing game that Jordan hasn't demonstrated.
Well, Jerry and Bob.
Yeah, let me
Mark
add
and I
something.
have droned on about this. You go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add to your conversation just something real basic. It was probably the series before, the helmet popped off. Travis's helmet popped off, and they had to take him out for the play. The series before that, I said on a text with some guys, Travis is exhausted, and they need to substitute. They need to get him out of there. He was fixing to get hurt. I mean, he had been chased for 3.5 quarters. And when you brought McKenzie into the game, you brought in a pair of fresh legs, fresh attitude. And that kind of thing is a 1-2 punch that I think really helped us to those 10 points. And I don't mean to take anything away from McKenzie, by no means am I. He executed it and it worked. But we saw a fading Notre Dame team. They were tired in that fourth quarter. And all of a sudden, McKenzie comes in there with a fresh deal. That's a weapon. And whether it's McKenzie playing 3 quarters and Jordan coming at the end of a game to finish, having that second guy, and it may be that you can use them even, and I don't like this either, but maybe you can keep them fresh into the fourth quarter by playing them earlier. So I really saw that as a big factor.
Yeah, well, we said with their skill sets, having two of them was going to be a benefit to Florida State this year. And I think we saw evidence of that with exactly what you're talking about on Sunday night. Bob, what about you on the QBs?
I think my biggest concern still with Jordan is the turnovers. He's just got to value every possession and these interceptions. I mean, one was the fourth down that Norvell called. One was a third down where he was just trying to make something happen. You got to throw those passes away. They've just got to drill into him. You cannot turn the ball over, especially on the Florida State side of the field. I love his escapability. I think it's what gives him it's his best attribute right now at this point of his career is that mobility and that ability to keep his eyes up on the field and try to find a receiver. But at the same time, he's contributing to the other team's points in a way that's really hurting you. So there's not a great decision here on who your quarterback is. My only rationalization right now is play them both against Jacksonville State and give Dave Clawson, Wake Forest, something to think about and just make Wake Forest think, hey, we got to prepare for two quarterbacks. And Norvell, I think, has shown that he's maybe not going to announce a starter on a week-to-week basis. And maybe that's a good thing for Florida State right now, is just kind of keep playing both of them and alternate how it best fits within the course of a game.
Yeah, listen, and two of the interceptions Jordan threw were ill-advised, and then the other one may have been ill-advised, but it was a spectacular play by Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, who came all the way from the opposite hash to make that play. I mean, it was I'm not sure that there's five safeties in all college football that could have made that play. I mean,
yeah, but that ball's in the air forever too, though.
Yeah, it was. I was getting ready to say, I mean, the ball shouldn't have been thrown, but it was a hell of a play. Now, listen, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the timeout. It came in a key moment of the game. You're down, I believe, 31-20 was the score at the time. You call a timeout on 4th and 6. Go for it on 4th and 2 in the third quarter. You're in your own territory. My kind of take on this is, sometimes you have players that leave their assignment to go take a chance and make a play, and the coaches are all right with it if it works out, but if it doesn't work out, it's definitely not all right. And my take on the timeout, I wouldn't have done it. I'm not the head coach at Florida State. But you were in that ball game, decidedly in that ball game at that time. And maybe Mike felt like he had some momentum rolling at that time, but it didn't work. Notre Dame did score 7 points on a short field after intercepting the pass on that play. I just want to get all three people. I want to get all three of you to talk on this. Do you agree with it? Why not?
I'll speak first, if you don't mind. I was aghast when he went for it in that situation. We didn't have momentum at that time, I didn't think. And we're going against one of the better fronts in the country. And you're only, 11 points? We were down
31-20, yep.
11 points. But there's 7 minutes still to go in the third. It looked to me almost like panic. But then I thought about it a little bit, and, his defense had given up a lot of points, on recent drives. And I felt maybe he felt he had a better chance of being aggressive and getting the first down on 4th and 2 than he did, and keeping his defense off the field than he did and giving the ball right back to Notre Dame in that situation. Now, I tried to, in my mind, try to crawl into his mind and say, why in the world would you go for it there? And that was the only thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of factors that go on the thought process on that. One is, and I always remember Bobby saying this, guys, I don't think we can stop them. What are we going to do, right? And I think that might have been, that had to enter into his thought process, that the defense was maybe a little gassed. And that and the second part of that is that you had a play you really liked, hey, I think we can really execute this play. I think we can, we can get it. It's not as big a risk if you really have confidence in how you're going to execute the play. And so that obviously factored into his decision making, because if he was not sure that they could do it, then he wouldn't have done it, right? And unfortunately, kids are kids, and guys do things, and it didn't come off the way he thought it would. And now, you make it, you're a hero. You don't, and you're a GOAT. And so, hindsight is 50-50, right? So it's it wasn't the right call, obviously, because they turn around and score on a short field, and it puts us in a spot. But bottom line is, we wouldn't. You sit there and you say we wouldn't have done it, but there are other factors that go into it and why he made a decision.
Well, certainly, and that's why I said that I'm not the head coach. I don't know exactly what's going on, but yes, if they had done it and they had made it, we're calling him Coach of the Year right now. I mean, you're right. It's we got the benefit of sitting in our cozy little houses and saying what we would have done. Yeah, so saying what we would have done. So yeah, so that you're right. But I was surprised. I was legitimately surprised. I was shocked, and it didn't work. So anyway, but yeah, listen, they're paying him $5 million a year to coach a football team, and I'm not quite getting paid that much to do this podcast. So there you go. Bob, what about you?
It didn't come out of left field, because Coach Norvell has shown, in the past last year, that he went for it on fourth down a couple times. I think somewhere around the 35 or so in a couple of games. So he definitely likes to roll the dice. I think he's got confidence either in his play call and the execution, or, like you guys have said, he's trying to protect the defense a little bit. I honestly just felt like you've got a really good punter, maybe not an all ACC punter, but a really good one who can flip the field. And at that point, it's not a bad play just to punt away. But obviously, he's playing the numbers and the analytics. I think that's a fair argument too.
Well, now you mentioned that. I also want to say this: Alex Mastromanno had a great game, by the way. We have not talked much special teams. I don't know if you guys remember the first punt. Mark, I want to talk to you about this. Snapping was an issue all over the place.
That was almost a disaster.
The first punt of the game in the end zone almost went. I didn't realize this when I watched the television copy. He had to jump to get that ball.
Yes, he did.
It was a great play by him, quite frankly. It wasn't 3 feet above his head, but it's not easy when you're sitting in your end zone. You got to try to punt with a rush coming at you. And then, oh, by the way, the snap is high. We saw it cost the team a point before I get to that, on that fourth down call, this is what I wanted to ask you guys since Bob brought. Would the element of surprise been better and bringing the punt team out and running a fake in that situation? Or do you like, Mark, having your offense who's used to handling the ball on the field?
It all depends if you think they're set up for the fake and you got a fake that you like.
Okay. All right.
That's what it comes down to.
And that was not my thought process. I just, as Bob talked about the punt team and the fact that Mastromanno had flipped the field on several occasions. If you throw the punt team out on the field, does Brian Kelly say, all right, well, they got a great punter, they're going to try to pin us deep and get the ball back and flip the field on us? And then you got the surprise element of the punt. But, listen, now I'm trying to get in two people's heads, right? So anyway, that's where that was coming from. But anyway, all right, so back to the snaps. Snap cost a point on a extra point. Obviously, it threw several plays off rhythm. Took the team, almost took the team out of a short, put him in a long field goal situation. But, Bavion got the illegal snap down towards the goal line. Anyway, we saw that, Mark. How do you overcome that as a coach? What do you do? It was an issue last night. And how do you overcome that as a coaching staff?
The one thing you want to go in every game is have perfect special teams and perfect fundamentals especially on snaps. And you spend an inordinate amount of time, and those long snappers, that's all they got to do is snap the football. Centers go out early to snap the football for 10, 15 minutes every day to snap the football. and just to really just drill that in. And I don't know what more you can do if guys are having mental lapses, or you don't have guys that have enough poise. I mean, it's got to be an automatic thing, what do? You got to find somebody that can do it. If this guy, if I don't know who our long snapper is, but if surely we can find somebody that can do it. It's not a hard skill to learn. We've actually had, receivers and corners and safeties. I remember Stan Shiver used to practice. He was our backup long snapper, So you can find somebody that can do it. But gee, Manetti, man, that's tough. If we kick an extra point, we win the game.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, and this, and again, I had not seen that much issue. And Jerry, Bob, you were at practice more than I was this preseason. But did you guys see the issues with quarterback center exchange and the shotgun like that in practice?
With the backup centers, for sure. I mean, it wasn't nearly as much of an issue with Maurice Smith, but candidly with Bavian, I don't know the walk-on's name offhand right now, but yeah, they were definitely trying different guys there, and it just wasn't working out real well consistently. We saw all kinds of guys trying to work with various centers. Dylan Gibbons was very patient in trying to do it. Some others too. So it's just something they're going to have to really focus on very intently.
The other thing you do, you look and see what's the circumstances around those bad snaps. Are we trying to run wide plays where he's taking deep steps and trying to run? Is it something in his technique that maybe we hadn't paid close attention to, and you got to drill down on? I mean, is he making calls? What are the circumstances where these snaps are going low and left or high and right or whatever, and just try to drill down on that and figure out. All right, let's drill that more. Let's do it. It's I've had this. I remember I had a guy at South Carolina who had some issues with snaps, and I mean, you just all you can do is work it, or you got to find somebody else.
Was that Beckwith?
No, that was Luther Dixon.
Oh, okay, Luther Dixon. All right, guys. So let's as we get ready to try to wrap this thing up. We all had in our own mind had our own set of expectations about what we thought this football team might be coming into the year. And then obviously each week, the one great thing about college football and sports in general is each week, particularly in college football and pro football, each week gives you a chance to reset your expectations based on what you've seen on that particular weekend. I think we all were, despite the fact that they lost, and we do think there's some things that a play here, in that game, literally every play mattered. Every situation mattered. One play here, Florida State wins one more play than they lost. You're talking about a winning the game versus losing the game. But Jerry, did this game reset your expectations for this football team?
Yes. I paused. It answered the questions that we wanted to hear answered. So I think we're competitive. I think we're willing to compete. And the other thing that's reset my expectations a little bit was watching some of our opponents play. North Carolina, Miami, Clemson. They all had offensive line problems. I mean, it was complete jailbreak all weekend. Those quarterbacks, everybody's down on the kid at Clemson, but geez, he was chased as fervently as was Jordan Travis. And same thing with Virginia Tech and North Carolina. They struggled to protect the North Carolina quarterback. So that gives me hope that we can compete against those teams.
Bob, what about you? How were your expectations reset after Sunday night?
Yeah, my hopes were that this team could compete with anybody not named Clemson, and now I honestly kind of feel like in some ways you can battle Clemson better than I even expected. Wanted this team to be fun and look good and be entertaining. They did that too. I think just about any team in the ACC is susceptible on any week. There's not there's not a group of teams that we thought, like we thought Clemson would be borderline unbeatable. North Carolina was going to be a nipping at their heels, no pun intended, number 2 team in the ACC, and now we don't exactly feel that, So this isn't maybe the best ACC after week 1, but you kind of leave a Florida State loss feeling like they can take it to just about anybody, home or road.
Well, it is funny that you mentioned week 1 because we've talked about this before. There's whether it's positive or negative, there is no week that was bigger overreaction one way or the other. So I cannot wait to see where we are after the Wake Forest game with our expectations. I think we're all going to go on the same theme here. But Mark, what about you? Were your expectations reset after Sunday night?
How you handle adversity is just as important as how you handle prosperity. And we find ourselves in a unique position to handle both at the same time.
Yep.
And they have changed. Again, the running backs, I didn't think they had them in them. That gives me great hope for being productive. I think Milton's emergence and what he showed gives us hope. I think the defensive line performing in the front 7, performing like they did, gives us tremendous hope. Can we carry that consistently through the season is the question. And I don't see, they done messed up because they done it. Now that's what we expect. Right. So yeah, it definitely has changed.
Yeah. And I might have too. Now I will say this, right now, I really hope that Notre Dame is as good as the voters think they are, because if they are that good a team, this Florida State team has got a chance to do what Bob said, compete against everybody. And and like Jerry, I'm also looking at what I saw from North Carolina and what I saw from Boston College and what I saw from Miami and North Carolina and the rest of the bunch and Clemson. And yes, certainly and I put it in my first, if the responding to adversity and the fight and the grit we saw in this team remains to be a constant theme for it, I think that they do have a chance to exceed the expectations that I had for them, which was 6-6, 7-5. Now that's just and that was based off what I saw last year. I know we've talked in the past about you got to have you can't go from one year to the next, but you do have that's where your baseline of beliefs is set, because we had not seen this particular team. And you're right. There's Skip Holtz used to say all the time, the shelf life of any one football team is 365 days. And it really doesn't matter what happened in 2020 to 2021. And what we're seeing is that, yes, your baseline is set off what you saw in 2020 in the spring and in the fall camp, but certainly was very impressed with what I saw. And listen, if they'll fight like this the rest of the season, I think they got a chance to exceed a lot of people's expectations.
I think you can sum it up and just say that we belong. Whereas I think before the game, we weren't so sure we belonged.
Yeah.
Now,
Mark,
I'm going to have to see Clemson struggle against somebody not named Georgia before I jump on and we can compete with. I mean, before I get on that train, but the rest of them, yes. Even the Gators, from what I saw Saturday night when they played.
Mark, let me ask you a question. As a coach, how do you approach your team when you get ready to watch film with them of this game? Do you what's your approach with them? And I asked that question, meaning, do you say, look at guys, look how well we played and how close we were. We need to clean up a few things, and we beat that team.
That's after the game. That's in the locker room. I'm proud of you. You guys fought, whatever. Today, it's unacceptable. These mistakes are unacceptable. There's accountability for those mistakes. There's accountability. There's hard coaching going on. You can't rest. And I would expect that these guys are going to be on these guys about the mistakes that were made. And that's the way it's got to be. The hugging and the I'm proud of you and all that stuff, that happened after the game.
Yeah.
If we're saying we have a culture of accountability, and the expectations are set in practice throughout camp and in spring, that's got to continue on throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I think when they go back, it's great film for coaching, it would seem to me, because we had 24 mistakes. The first down penalties, 1st and 15, 1st and 20.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, there were a few penalties on defense, but not like the way we shot ourselves in the foot on offense on 1st down. And I think that, and that's good. You mentioned a few missed tackles, which you're going to have early in the season. You can look at that and say, look at all these yards after initial contact. We can clean that up in some cases. But I come out of the game saying we fought toe to toe with a number 7 or 9 ranked team, and we still have a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both you and Mark. It's great teaching tape. Hey, we're this close. We're this close to winning this game. In a game nobody gave us a shot at, and I think you can push them a little bit hard. I mean, I think, Mark, you could tell me wrong. I think you can push them a little bit harder than you did
absolutely.
the week before. Because
I think, and as a player, I think you'd be disappointed if you didn't. If they didn't come, if they didn't hold me accountable, I'd be disappointed. Because we can play better. I came there to win games. I came there to celebrate and win championships. And I want you to hold me to that standard. If that's not your attitude, you don't belong.
So the other question, Mark, is: do you think that the coaches got some buy-in from the players?
Sure, yes. Mark, he asked you, but I'm giving my opinion. Yes.
No, both of you. Open-ended question.
I think it's obvious. I mean, you don't fight like that. You don't come back from down 18 in the 4th quarter if you're not bought in. If you're not fighting for the guy next to you, holding each other accountable and all that cheesy stuff, man. That's real. It is. It's a little cliche. It's a little cheesy, but man, that's what it takes to win hard football games like this. This is a hard football game. This takes you to your limits. This makes you do things that you don't know you can do. Makes you make plays, and it's where the talent can shine. And you're dependent on the coaches pushing situations where you can perform, and you depend on them to hold you accountable to those things. And you know what? To do that, you got to have buy-in. As a player, you got to believe, and it's obvious they do, because they're trying to do what they're coached to do. And that's see a lot of freelancing.
So that was the buy-in that we saw on Sunday. Does that buy-in grow when we get back on the practice field Tuesday?
Well, when you're doing up downs and running gassers and you're getting yelled at, there's probably not a lot of buy-in. when you're sitting alone in the dorm room and when Saturday comes around, you're glad that you had that.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, I know we're getting close to time to wrap up. I got one question I want to ask all three of you. I was just sitting here thinking about it. We've done now roughly 24, maybe 25 of these Sunday post-game press podcasts. And quite honestly, a lot of them have not been fun to do. I mean, and I know we'd much rather be sitting here talking about an FSU win than an FSU loss. But how damn good does it feel to have fun on a Sunday podcast for the first time since we've restarted the Osceola as a website?
I'm just glad I'm not talking about attitude and effort and quitting and all that stuff. That was just too painful the last 2-3 years. And talking about what we're talking about is much, much better for sure.
I have been this is probably of all the podcasts that we have done, and I listened. It was fun to do the one after the North Carolina game last year. There's no doubt, but I like I told you guys before, my computer crashed this afternoon right before we started this thing. I had been up watching. I watched the game 1.5 times, and it was a fun game to watch. And Jerry, what about you? How did you feel about looking forward to today's podcast?
It's a lot easier, writing after wins is fun, and this felt like a win. It's enough to analyze, to write about, but I feel a lot better about right now. Yes, absolutely.
Bob, what about you?
Yeah, Mike Norvell's talked about building the culture and demanding setting a standard. And I think we've seen it. We've seen the effort for all their hard work throughout the off season. It was displayed on Sunday night, and definitely lots of reasons to be optimistic here moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I cannot, obviously they have Jacksonville State this week at home at 8 p.m. in a ACC network game. And, this should be a game that Florida State should be able to work out some of those kinks that they're going to see on film today as they start to prepare for the Gamecocks, and get ready to move forward to the ACC schedule. But I do want to thank each of you guys for coming on today. Obviously, want to thank our Osceola subscribers for listening. And if you are not an Osceola subscriber, please, and you just listen to our podcast, we're obviously appreciative of that, but I hope that you would give us a try and subscribe to the Osceola. You can go to theosceola.com and go to the subscription tab, and then the discount code field, enter FSU20 to receive a 20% discount off our annual rate of $74.95. And if you don't want to go with a monthly rate, you can obviously go with try us for a month at $6.95 per month. But certainly we'll be here every Sunday. This is a Monday. I'm off schedule, but every day, every Sunday, from here on out, we'll have a post-game pod, and we'll have some midweek pods during the season too. But I want to thank everybody for listening, and I want to thank Jerry, Bob, and Mark for joining me. And we'll be back next week on Seminole Sidelines, presented by Alumni Hall.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall. This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!